There's a couple things you're going to see in Cataclysm that have changed. Have you played in the beta at all? No? Yeah, you're definitely going to see some changes there from what we have in shipping WoW now. We're a little bit more stringent about which classes are able to roll on which items, specifically looking at, can they wear this piece? Is it good for their spec? You're going to see some advancements there. As far as ninja looting and those concepts, we're hoping that what you're going to see there is a way that, by the way that you can roll individually only on that item, if that guy isn't able to wear it, hopefully he shouldn't be able to roll on it, which would keep him away from being able to take that item. It's definitely an area that we've known that we've had to work on, so it's something that we looked at for Cataclysm, so you'll definitely see improvements there.
Yeah, with 10 and 25 man raids having the same loot now, what are you thinking about as far as getting them to the same difficulty level? Because like right now with 10 mans, you just have less people, so you have more room to move around and everything, and I'm just wondering what you think about balancing there.
Sure. Tuning both 10 and 25 to be the same difficulty is actually, it's a real tough challenge for us. That's one of the reasons we're like in beta now. Like one of our first like beta encounters, or first couple of beta encounters, we had Omnitron that was much more difficult in 10, and then we had Halphus that was much more difficult in 25. We think we can make difficult encounters for both 10 and 25. We absolutely have the tools, the mechanics. It's just a matter of like really sort of delving down and seeing like what are the different mechanics classes have to play with. In Cataclysm, a lot has changed, so we're having to adapt to that. But we absolutely totally think that we'll be able to make them roughly the same difficulty. There'll be some bumps and bruises along the way. Certainly, like I'm sure, like people will think that this one's easier in 10 and this one's easier in 25. But I think overall, we'll definitely get to the point where overall it'll be the same difficulty.
I think that the point we're trying to make is that we know that that's an extremely high priority, and so we're watching it very closely because we know that that's a key to making the flexible raid lock system work. So it's something we're going to be working extremely hard on to make sure that we get them as close as we can.
Yeah.
Hi, my question's mainly about tuning and the fact that it's kind of weird that you have 7 or 8 bosses on Heroic 25 that are easier than, say, normal Lich King on 25. And also, what have you learned forward going, those 7 or 8 bosses that are easier, there's a huge difficulty jump between those 7 or 8, then going to Death Whisper, then going to Putricide Syndragosa, and then the massive difficulty jump going to Lich King. And I'm not saying hard is bad, it's good, keep it up, but what have you learned going forward?
Okay, yeah, so Lich King was sort of a special encounter for us. I mean, it's Wrath of the Lich King, so we want to make sure that whenever you went up there, it was a super epic fight, that it carried with it a bit of difficulty. Yeah, it meant that some of the heroic encounters ended up being less difficult than him, but we were perfectly willing to deal with that. And as far as Death Whisper being more difficult than like Marrogar or other ones, there's always going to be a little bit of variation and difficulty. Like I said, we try to make it a nice like line where the further you get into a dungeon, the harder it gets. But reality is that what we really sort of end up getting is just we get a bunch of different encounters, and one encounter can be difficult for one raid based upon group composition or just the players and their own skills, and that could be super hard, but another like encounter is super easy, and you go to another raid and that's completely flipped. So I wouldn't say okay, yes, the boat was easy for everyone, but that's we were okay with that. The boat was kind of this cool like event thing, and that was fine. Yeah.
With the flexible raid lockout, why isn't Pugs gonna stay? I mean, why wouldn't Pugs break apart easier? If you are in a Pug and you fail once or twice, people are gonna start splitting off really quick. Is there anything that's going to prevent that? I mean, with them being able to come into another group at any time?
I think that's something that players I mean, we know that there's going to be some psychology there, but that's going to play out over time. Obviously, initially, that's going to be rough because not everyone's going to know the encounters. But if you look at the state of Lich King now, right, where most people, we've got the weekly raids, the weekly raid quests, so many people know so many more of the encounters. I think obviously up front in Cataclysm, it's going to be a little rough. But I think as time goes by and players learn more of the encounters, you're actually going to see a much better Pug experience than you're seeing now.
Yeah, I think you will. I mean, again, reality is sometimes you run across a bad Pug.
Yeah.
Happens to us all. But when it does, the nice thing about like the new system is that you're not hosed for the entire week, right? Now, sometimes you'll find really great Pugs and you'll be like, oh, this is amazing. Just don't break up, don't break up, don't break up, don't break up, don't break up. We got to get this loot. But you know, with you saying that, like, hey, it's easier to break up. It's also easier to get new people. Yeah. Right. There's the flip side to it as well. Like, it's much more easier to find people that, hey, I had some time this week and haven't raided, and I know what I'm doing, and I'll be an asset to this Pug. So it works both ways there, and I think overall it ended up being a net positive.
There's two sides to the coin on that, for sure.
Yeah.
My question is about legendary weapons. With 10 and 25 man lockouts being combined in Cataclysm, are there any plans to go back to Ulduar and Icecrown Citadel with regards to Shadowmourne and Valinir in terms of how they drop in? They only drop in 25 man right now. Are there any plans to go back and make them drop in 10s for 10 man guilds that can't make it in 25s?
So you're asking, are we going to go back and change the way the Shadowmourne fragments drop and all the other, like, are we going to correct the way those change? That's a good point. That's something I'll have to bring up when we get back in the office on Monday. I don't know the answer to that offhand, so I don't really want to say something that's incorrect to you, but I don't see why we wouldn't.
Yeah, it's a great suggestion. I mean, for sure.
Yeah.
Hey, so in the Clism, are you changing BRD as well? Like when you were talking about the classic dungeons? That's like the worst example of, what, 50 bosses?
So, right, yeah, BRD.
Glad you asked.
So I've done a pass through most of all the old dungeons and done what I've called is trimming a lot of the suck. Things like 20-second sleeps and 10-second disarms and, you know, things that were just really, really obnoxious. Unfortunately, breaking up BRD is really super tricky because it's so actually tightly integrated. There's no like clean places to make a break from a geometry standpoint on the art side. So what I did do is put in some teleporters.
So it's similar to like what you see in Ulduar, right? You beat this boss and you get access to this teleporter.
Yeah, there's a teleporter at the entrance. There's a teleporter past the bar. There's a teleporter that's over in the city somewhere. I forget exactly where.
You're actually going to see some of that in the Cataclysm dungeons too. There's a few teleporters.
Yeah, I mean we've added teleporters to Shadowfang. If you die on the last boss in Shadowfang, that's a horrible run. Yeah. So we added teleporters there, teleporters to Dead Mines. We actually gone through, you'll see in like the next, if you haven't seen it already, you'll see in the next beta iteration that we've added to a lot of Cataclysm ones as well. Basically, and something else that we've done that we haven't really talked about is the graveyards are super close now. Yeah. We actually recently went back and said, like,
there's no graveyard further than 30 seconds away, I think, from any dungeon entrance. So in
a lot of cases, we put the graveyard for a dungeon right